Welcome and good morning. My name's Nancy Schmidt and I'm the service leader today. And I have to confess, this is my first time doing Zoom service leading, and I'm finding it a little bit unnerving. I so miss seeing all of you in person and really look forward to the time when we can all be together in person in our beloved Sunshine Room and Sanctuary. The Unitarian Congregation of Guelph was founded in 1961, so we're entering our 61st year. Those of us that are here today are descendants of those who dared to dream for the establishment of a liberal religious community here in Guelph. UCG is a democratically run, self-supporting congregation, one of 46 member congregations and emerging groups in Canada, from Prince Edward Island to Vancouver Island, who all make up part of the Canadian Unitarian Council. We are an inclusive community who come together to explore important life questions, to support each other in living with purpose and meaning, and work towards peace and justice. We welcome you, whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, your abilities, your ethnicities, and sexual orientation. Whatever your journey, whatever your path, you're welcome here in our community of seekers. Our services vary from week to week to recognize and honor our spiritual diversity and are framed around our shared commitment to our 7 Unitarian principles. For information about us and Unitarianism, please visit our website, and you can also sign up for our weekly email newsletter. Our speaker today is Reverend Linda Thompson, who has been at our congregation a number of times, both as speaker and as consultant, and I'll say more about her later on in the service. There will be a virtual sunshine room from 11:30 to 11:45, and then there'll be a reflection circle from 11:45 to 12:45. And I ask everyone now to please put yourself on mute, though I realize saying that to Unitarians can be at times very challenging. The online service is being recorded, except for the joys and concerns. I want to give a special thanks to Berna, who is our greeter today, to Carrie and Lorna for all of their technical support in making this service happen, to Aspen and Mel, who helped with the selection for the music today, and to Holly and her daughter Audrey, who are going to be doing the chalice lighting and extinguishing. As we gather here today, we acknowledge that Guelph is situated in the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabe peoples. During our region's rich Indigenous history, these lands have been home to the Chonenotan peoples, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Métis. We express gratitude for the sharing of these lands. We also acknowledge the tragic history between the First Peoples and newcomers. We strive to be accountable by acknowledging this history and cultivating respect in our relationships with Indigenous peoples and the land. And so now we'll have the chalice lighting.
In this flame, we witness the power of transformation, awed again by the wonder of life. We are grateful to be vital of this living universe and inspiring community.
I want to acknowledge that tomorrow is Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the US, and it was designed to recognize the life and legacy of him as a leader of nonviolent activism during the civil rights movement. The holiday was first observed back in 1986, with a number of states at the time choosing to give the holiday another name, like Civics Day, or combining it with other holidays. 2 states paired it with the celebration of the birth of Robert E. Lee, the Confederate general in the US Civil War who was born the day after on the 19th. It wasn't until 2020, this past year, that it was officially observed by all 50 states as Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So these are our opening words. 10 years ago, I did a service at the congregation called Whose Am I? And I want to take a reading I used in that service for this morning's opening words because I think it fits very well with the theme that Linda's going to be speaking to. Douglas Steer, a Quaker teacher, says that the ancient question, who am I, inevitably leads to a deeper one, whose am I? Because there is no identity outside of relationship. You can't be a person by yourself. Who needs you? Who loves you? To whom are you accountable? Whose life is altered by your choices? With whose life, whose lives is your own all bound up inextricably in obvious and invisible ways? I was and am still haunted by his questions. And I found it a challenging and yet very reaffirming exercise as I tried to answer his question, in particular as it relates to my relationship to UCG, coming out of a need to step back for a while and questioning just how far back to step. So whose am I? I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. Whose am I? I am my sisters, my children's, their partners, and my dearest, closest friends. Whose am I? I am the earth's. Whose am I? I am the lakes and rivers I have canoed on, and of the mountains and forests whose light and shadows I have hiked through. Whose am I? I am part of all that I have seen, felt, known, and done. Whose am I? I belong to the Unitarian congregation of Guelph, a resilient, caring, and beloved community whose RE programs guided the moral development of my children, provided a family of friends and confidants for Harold and I, and was there for me when I needed it most. Whose am I? I am yours. Usually when I lead a service for music, I tend to do a song that is around or involves some kind of movement. And I just couldn't figure out how to have us do the Alleluia, Alleluia, where we stand up and sit down without there being total chaos and confusion, though I wish almost that I had tried it. Today's song, though, is something that we sang in around a year ago when we were physically together. And then when I was listening to it, it just brought such a smile to my face as I imagined us all there together in community. And fortunately, Aspen actually recorded it. So I'm asking that this time around, we sing with heart, knowing that at some time in the future, we're going to be back together in our building, singing and congregating all together. So now our song.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of reading, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Do it around sound. Come, come, whoever you are.
Our children's story today is titled The Gruffalo, one of my favorites, about a very clever mouse in the face of adversity.
The Gruffalo. A mouse took a stroll through the deep dark wood. A fox saw the mouse, and the mouse looked good. "Where are you going to, little brown mouse?" "Come and have lunch in my underground house." "It's terribly kind of you, fox, but no, I'm going to have lunch with a Gruffalo." "A Gruffalo? What's a Gruffalo?" "A Gruffalo, why didn't you know? He has terrible tusks and terrible claws and terrible teeth in his terrible jaws." "Where are you meeting him?" "Here by these rocks, and his favorite food is roasted fox." "Roasted fox, I'm off," Fox said. "Goodbye, little mouse," and away he sped. Silly old fox, doesn't he know? There's no such thing as a Gruffalo. On went the mouse through the deep dark wood. An owl saw the mouse, and the mouse looked good. "Where are you going to, little brown mouse?" "Come and have tea in my treetop house." "It's frightfully nice of you, owl, but no, I'm going to have tea with a Gruffalo." "A Gruffalo? What's a Gruffalo?" "A Gruffalo, why, didn't you know? He has knobby knees and turned out toes and a poisonous wart at the end of his nose." "Where are you meeting him?" "Here by this stream, and his favorite food is owl ice cream." "Owl ice cream, to-wit, to-woo! Goodbye, little mouse," and away owl flew. Silly old owl, doesn't he know? There's no such thing as a Gruffalo. On went the mouse through the deep dark wood. A snake saw the mouse, and the mouse looked good. "Where are you going to, little brown mouse?" "Come for a feast in my log pile house." "It's wonderfully good of you, snake, but no, I'm having a feast with a Gruffalo." "A Gruffalo? What's a Gruffalo?" "A Gruffalo? Why, didn't you know? His eyes are orange, his tongue is black, he has purple prickles all over his back." "Where are you meeting him?" "Here by this lake, and his favorite food is scrambled snake." "Scrambled snake, it's time I hid. Goodbye, little mouse," and away snake slid. Silly old snake, doesn't he know? There's no such thing as a Gruffalo. Oh! But who is this creature with terrible claws and terrible teeth in his terrible jaws? He has knobby knees and turned out toes and a poisonous wart at the end of his nose. His eyes are orange, his tongue is black, he has purple prickles all over his back. Oh help, oh no, it's a Gruffalo. "My favorite food," the Gruffalo said. "You'll taste good on a slice of bread." "Good?" said the mouse. "Don't call me good. I'm the scariest creature in this wood. Just walk behind me and soon you'll see everyone is afraid of me." "All right," said the Gruffalo, bursting with laughter. "You go ahead, I'll follow after." They walked and walked till the Gruffalo said, "I hear a hiss in the leaves ahead." "It's Snake," said the mouse. "Why, Snake, hello." Snake took one look at the Gruffalo. "Oh, crumbs," he said, "goodbye, little mouse," and off he slid to his log pile house. "You see," said the mouse, "I told you so." "Amazing," said the Gruffalo. They walked some more till the Gruffalo said, "I hear a hoot in the trees ahead." "It's Owl," said the mouse. "Why, Owl, hello." Owl took one look at the Gruffalo. "Oh dear," he said, "goodbye, little mouse," and off he flew to his treetop house. "You see," said the mouse, "I told you so." "Astounding," said the Gruffalo. They walked some more till the Gruffalo said, "I can hear feet on the path ahead." "It's Fox," said the mouse. Why, Fox, hello. Fox took one look at the Gruffalo. Oh, help, he said. Goodbye, little mouse. And off he ran to his underground house. Well, Gruffalo, said the mouse, you see, everyone is afraid of me. But now my tummy's beginning to rumble. My favorite food is Gruffalo Crumble. Gruffalo Crumble, said the Gruffalo said, and quick as a wind he turned and fled. All was quiet in the deep dark wood. The mouse found a nut, and the nut was good.
So this time, it gives me great delight to welcome Reverend Linda Thompson, who has come to our congregation over a number of years with her work in the CUC, where she engages in congregational and UU community development. She is a mother, a daughter, a spouse, a very proud grandmother, a teacher, a camper, a skier, a gardener, an educator, a minister, a cook, and a historian, and what I find most interesting, a novice mandolin player. So Linda, welcome to our congregation this morning.
Thank you, Nancy. Very novice mandolin player. I keep on saying it'll be a retirement project. Who knows when I'll retire? So we'll see. It's delightful to be here as you were logging on this morning to see so many faces of people that I know and I hold with great fondness. So thank you for having me here this morning. I'm going to start us with a meditation. So please join with me. Following the meditation, there'll be a bit of silence. So make yourselves comfortable. Shoulders away from those ears a bit, if that's where they're at this moment. Maybe find a spot for your feet on the ground and take a deep breath. We gather here today taking time from our regular days to seek the encouragement and comfort that can be found in community. It matters that we see others, that we look into faces both familiar and unfamiliar, and in doing so be reminded of our own humanity. Today we are mindful and aware of how life is fragile and precious. We are saddened by the knowledge that there are people struggling, people grieving, and that there are injustices to be faced. And may we find in our sadness and our struggle the capacity to care even more deeply for justice, for fairness, and for compassion. We also know that some are joy-filled, celebrating their good fortune. May we have the grace to be glad for them. May we hold onto our high resolve to embrace diversity, love mightily, and care deeply. And may we find here both the capacity and courage to live our lives with compassion and grace. And may we remember to appreciate the pleasures of this life, to laugh often and love deeply. I want to reflect on building community during these extraordinary days. These are extraordinary days, and I was reminded of this recently when my 94-year-old father and I were talking on one of our daily phone calls. And he, 94 years old, said, "I've never experienced anything like this." This from a man whose mother died of meningitis in 1941, a year before penicillin was widely available to treat infections. He remembers standing at her grave with his father and siblings while other mourners stood at a safe distance, and how they then went home to a large quarantine sign on their front porch. And that was followed by a 2-week period when food was delivered to their front door. "I've never seen this before," he said. This from a man who remembers childhood fears of polio and severe restrictions on his summer activities as his parents scrambled to keep him safe, even as hospitals and governments worked feverishly to build iron lungs and splinting devices. These are extraordinary days. Days that give me a new understanding of my grandmother's anxiety each time one of us had a cold, and a new understanding of the mustard plasters I was forced to endure. These are extraordinary days. The pandemic is only a part of the story. It's the main focus of my reflection today. These are extraordinary days, but they are not, as the newscasters like to say, unprecedented times. A brief review of the history of humanity tells us there have been other pandemics. And a review of the history of pandemics reminds us we are not alone. The stresses of COVID-19 are not new in human history. Bubonic plague, yellow fever, the European plagues of the 17th and 18th century, the Spanish flu of 100 years ago, and so many more. Things are different today than they were in those earlier times. Look at us. We can see one another's faces. Things are different, and we have more information. In just over 120 years since viruses were discovered, we've learned a lot about them, how they spread, how to control, hopefully how to prevent them. We are struggling, but we are further ahead than earlier people were. One medical historian observes that epidemics seem to follow a social pattern. Charles Rosenberg describes them as social dramas in 3 acts. It seems the earliest signs are not large, but rather subtle. Maybe out of a desire for self-reassurance or a concern for economic interest, people often ignore and downplay the earliest clues. I think we did that here just over a year ago. Epidemiologists see them, but we wanted to believe that it was going to be okay. People often ignore the clues until the presentation of more illness and death and those charts that we've all seen force acknowledgement. And some still, for reasons beyond my reckoning, are still in denial. And after those early stages, the second phase, recognition, follows. And people seem to alternatively demand and offer explanations. Sometimes the explanations are based in science, a luxury of our current age. Though historically and still today, we've seen some explanation that are based in moral or simplistic mechanistic understandings. And I'm sure you have seen these in the news too. COVID-19 is the price we pay for increasing sexual permissiveness, I've read, or for atheism, or for consumerism. These ideas and opinions are amplified today through social media. Explanations, sound or not, generate public responses. And the third act of public response can be helpful or it can be catastrophic. We are not chasing down old women, accusing them of witchcraft in response to a former understanding of the cause of a pandemic. But I heard not so long ago of a young teen whose family is a member of one of our Vancouver area congregations who has been verbally and physically assaulted because she's an Asian Canadian. There is definitely angst in the system. Epidemics eventually resolve because the supply of potential victims is exhausted or because of some public action. Epidemics proceed on their stage through a plot line of increasing tension, a crisis of individual and collective character, and then eventually they drift away. And today we are somewhere in the middle part of the drama. We don't know exactly where because we don't know how this is all going to play out. This second wave may ebb, only to see a third one at a later time. Vaccines may or may not help us as new variants are identified. We just don't know what the dramatic arc of this particular pandemic is going to look like. We don't know how much influence those who stubbornly refuse to listen to science are going to have. We see a lot of evidence of worrisome public response in some places. Just yesterday in Toronto, a rally protesting some of the restrictions we're facing. Politics and posturing seem to be driving the agenda for more than a few people. I suspect we've all had more than one conversation about this that just ends with a, we don't know. It's a strange thing to be actors in a drama without a script. We just don't know the particulars of how this pandemic is going to play out. But there are things we can know. We can know what choices we as individuals will make. We can know if we're going to listen to public health experts. We can know if we're going to muster up as much grace and patience and kindness as we can. We can know how we will choose to be in relationship with those we know and love and those we don't know. These are hard and extraordinary times. We all miss friends and the warmth of a backpack or a hug. Some of us are stressed by the loss of income, the need to care for children full time, by changed working situations, by isolation, by concern for our health. If you're anything like me, you'll find some days to be much easier than others. Some nights I sleep soundly, and others I toss and turn. Some days I find myself feeling quite hopeful, and others feel terribly difficult. And what I've learned in the past 10 months is that I can strive to be as gentle with myself as I try to be with others. There's no right way to be in a pandemic. A lot of my thinking about this is rooted in my values and in my approach to faith. I was pretty shocked when a conservative congregation around the corner from my house hung a large banner in late March. It's still hanging there. It was 2 weeks into the state of the emergency when I read, "Repent, the kingdom of God is at hand." It's definitely one theological response to the circumstances in which we find ourselves. Get ready, people, it is saying. The end is imminent. I'm not sure if they are suggesting that I ought to consider my individual demise or if the end of times are the concern. It doesn't matter to me. My faith suggests not that I ought to repent, but rather that I ought to find ways to connect. These are extraordinary times. The ways in which we connect and gather as congregations have been turned upside down. Look at us. Who are we, I find myself wondering, if we aren't the people who gather together in beloved spaces to breathe and sing and sit together? Who are we, I find myself wondering, if we aren't meeting to plan our action to a social issue that faces our community? Who are we, I find myself wondering, if we're not checking in on one another after service over a coffee? These things are important to me, and I think they're important to you too. But they aren't, at a fundamental level, who we are. They are well-loved and familiar forms, but they're not the function. Our task in these days is to find new ways to be together in community, just like we are now. We are learning as we go, and we are adapting and adjusting. Like I said, my response is rooted in values and in my take on UU theology. We claim to be people who state explicitly that we value science and reason. Humans, we believe, have capacity to think and solve puzzles using sound scientific inquiry. Our principles remind us that we value interdependence. I'm not in this pandemic by myself. I'm in it with you and everyone around me. I don't think I'm a coronavirus carrier, but I have, even when it wasn't required, wear a mask when I go to the store. I follow public health guidelines because I might be a carrier. And I hope you take care too, because our choices are at some level indistinguishable from one another. I believe we all have inherent worth and dignity. So for me, there is no throwaway percentage of people that I'm willing to accept as, well, that's the way it goes. We believe in justice. And the way we do that work may look different today than it did last year. but I think we still need to be thinking about what we can do to address systematic inequities. I know I can live these values as an individual, but I'm mindful of how much more powerful I can be when I engage with others to consider how we can live our best selves into being. And for many of us, all of this is made even harder as we watch the news and find real reason for concern in the violence and divisiveness we see. This week, the United Church of Christ, a large US liberal denomination, has issued warnings because of evidence that their and other liberal religious denominations might be targets of violence this week. They've urged those congregations that were meeting in person to go online this Sunday. That's so shocking. These are hard days. And for you here in Guelph, these days have an added complication. Last year, Reverend Peter Bellotta joined you in ministry, and now he's decided to go in other directions. The congregational plans you had have been detoured by the pandemic and now by a change in ministry. Finding ways to be together, to imagine your congregational life is the work of these days. You'll have questions and conversations about what comes next. These will be days to remember that we value others, that we believe in listening to one another, that we believe in remaining curious. These are extraordinary days. Times are challenging. Healthy communities know that it is important to remember what it is we are trying to do and who it is we are trying to be. We can help one another in this work. As you imagine the future of the congregation, as you live through these hard times of physical distance and isolation, together, maybe together we can even out the good and the bad days that we are each bound to have. When I'm too overwhelmed to ask how I can help a friend, I'm encouraged to know that someone else can take a turn in the helper role. Even on days when I personally feel too powerless or too tired, I take comfort in knowing that someone else can take a turn, writing a letter, extending a kindness, or standing resolved in the face of prejudice or misinformation. I need you. I need all of you. We need one another. Together in this new, hopefully not too long-standing form of community, we can still do the work we've always wanted to do. We can call ourselves, we can call one another, and those who would join with us to a response of care and a concern, perhaps of caution, but not of fear. These are extraordinary times. The dramatic arc of this pandemic is still not completely evident to us. The play is not over. It will be someday. And when it is, I want us to know that we, the Unitarian congregation of Guelph, and our congregations here in Canada and beyond, made choices based in kindness, love, and care. We can't control the arc of the drama, but maybe, just maybe, the ways we care for one another can influence it. These are extraordinary times.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage.
We'll share closing words before we move to extinguishing the chalice. And now may the blessings of life and memory be upon us and upon this congregation. May we dare to hope for the future. May the love that we share bring strength and joy to our hearts, and the peace of this community be with us until we meet again.
We gathered to light this chalice. We part the flame lit within us, an inspired community.
Thank you, Linda, for the optimism and courage you provided today. I've never been really a Zoom fan, but I am just amazed at how it can bring us together in community. And so for everyone here today, thank you for coming.